More FA Cup action for us to look through yesterday, Cass. What about the game at Deepdale? Preston against Spurs.
Well, interestingly, we could have picked Heung-min Son's first strike. I mean, he got a great goal yesterday. And it's interesting because obviously Harry Kane wasn't in the team yesterday. And it's a fair point. I mean, look, Heung-min Son plays his best football when when Kane's not in the team, he seems to take up the mantle and produce. He must have had 4 or 5 efforts from outside the 18-yard box yesterday, and 2 or 3 of them were terrific strikes. And he's shone, and he's had a very difficult season. We know how good he is. And I'm not saying he's a poorer player with Kane. He's not. Him and Kane have had a fantastic telepathic relationship for a number of years. Kane has got him a lot of goals and vice versa. And so they've been terrific for Spurs. But watching him yesterday and in the forward line, because Perisic played more central, it was really interesting. I mean, look, a very experienced Croatian who's been around the block, played different positions. It was quite interesting watching Spurs yesterday. We had Mark Lawrenson on talking about the game before, and he said, look, Preston can't find a goal. Yeah. And that stood out in the game.
Yeah, 3-0, Spurs won that one. But it's interesting what you said about Son Heung-min, because there was a spell, wasn't there?
the other way around, didn't I?
Well, you're not the only one that says it. I mean, you look at the times where Harry Kane has been injured and obviously not being able to play for Spurs, it does sometimes feel that Son then comes to the fore. Although, of course, you can look back to last season and the end to last season, which earned him the share of the Golden Boot, didn't it? With his 23 goals. Has struggled this time around for form. It's the 2 goals now make it 8 this season for Spurs. Did he look like the Son of old? Could this kind of be the catalyst that he's needed to reignite his season?
Well, do you know what I was really impressed with? It's that type of game. It's a FA Cup tie. It's against a lower division rival. Mm-hmm. You might be a little bit, lackadaisical in your approach, or think, we're going to turn up and win today. He had so much hunger and desire in his performance. I felt fair play. You'll be fine this season. You'll get going again. We've all had bad patches. We've all been there. Only the very best players, they have short patches where they don't produce it. He's had a longer one than most people would have thought, especially Spurs fans. And yesterday I thought the hunger and desire will be fine. He'll get going again by the end of the season. And Spurs need him because at his best, he's a very dangerous player. The World Cup was a difficult one because he had an injury, didn't he? He had a problem with his cheek and he was wearing a mask, and you could tell that he wasn't quite right physically in the World Cup in Qatar. But certainly yesterday's performance, and yes, it's an FA Cup tie, but take a lot of pride out of that brace he got in that game, because it was a terrific. They were both great goals.
You're right, though, about the mask, because he did mention how he found it difficult to actually see out the mask.
It's a problem, isn't it, if you can't see?
Yes, but he's stopped wearing it now, and maybe that's kind of the extra little thing that he needs to try and get himself back being the player that we all, and a great attacking player that we know he can be. And he actually talked about how he needed those goals afterwards when he asked about the 2 goals yesterday at Deepdale. He said, I needed those goals for my confidence, and as a striker or as an attacking player, the important thing is you get that goal. So he says, I'm very, very happy. So it could be the start of something. We talk about Antonio Conte being a serial winner. Cass, is this a competition you think Spurs could win then?
Well, they can. Yeah, of course they can. They're a good enough side, and if you get the draw right, you can go very deep. And then when you get deep, you can cause upsets. And look, I was quite critical of Spurs. Not say yesterday about Kane about winning trophies, or certainly Premier League and Champions League, which are extreme levels of success. The top 6 are... Look, we saw yesterday the Premier League top teams just cruise through. They just do. Man United were really comfortable. Spurs were really comfortable yesterday. Premier League teams... And look, and I know they're not doing so well, Leicester in the Premier League, but quite a comfortable winning at Walsall. There was no... Leeds at Accrington. All the Premier League teams had quite an easy ride yesterday. No one really looked like they were in trouble. Spurs can go really deep. The bigger picture for Spurs is it's always a tricky one when even your manager's not committed to the club or the future of the club yet. That's a real plaster to try and heal the club and get the club in the right direction. If the manager's not going, well, I want to stay. I'm staying here and see the project. Know what I need to do in the summer. I don't really feel that at Spurs. It all feels a bit murky and a little bit in the unknown.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Conte as a manager clearly plays with his heart on his sleeve. And you see that with his post-match interviews. When the things have gone well, he's obviously delighted. And when things have gone bad, he's not happy. And he talks about, I don't know what more I can do with this team, and I don't know if I'm going to be here. All this sort of indecisiveness, which I agree can't help the squad when they're not sure who's going to be in charge in the next few months sometimes. Spurs are 5th. They're 3 points off 4th spot. They've got Manchester City next in the Premier League.
Yeah. Well,
could they battle with them?
They'll have to defend way better than they are at the moment. Look, I think it's not that difficult a solution to make Spurs a far better team, is because the forward areas speak for itself. You need a playmaker again in midfield that can make things happen. I think defensively, that's where your most surgery is at the club. That to me is Spurs. They can get the surgery right at the back, then they can now be a team that make Champions League and be competing against the very best in the particular league. So I don't think it's a disastrous situation. I just think it's a problematic one where the solutions are quite obvious.